Good evening and welcome to our daily devotional reading. A special welcome to the members of our make-believe monastery. I hope you had a good day. Let's take a few deep breaths. Let your body become quiet. Let your mind become quiet. Let your heart become quiet. It's most often the loudest of our organs. And let's listen to Plato. Oh, before we begin, I brought my little diagram thingy-majiggy that I made. So I'll be going through this after we've read, just to be sure that everything is clear. Because it's not clear to me if I don't have it on paper. And maybe you share my sense of understanding. So, that being said, let's listen to Plato. Stranger. Then now you and I have come to an understanding not only about the name of the angler's art, but about the definition of the thing itself. One half of all art was acquisitive, half of the acquisitive art was conquest or taking by force, half of this was hunting, and half of hunting was hunting animals. Half of this was hunting water animals. Of this again, the under half was fishing. Half of fishing was striking. A part of striking was fishing with a barb. And one half of this again being the kind which strikes with a hook and draws the fish from below upward, is the art which we have been seeking, and which from the nature of the operation is denoted angling or drawing up. Dietatus. The result has been quite satisfactory, brought out. Stranger, and now, following this pattern, let us endeavor to find out what a sophist is. Dietatus. By all means. Stranger. The first question about the angler was whether he was a skilled artist or unskilled. Dietatus. True. Stranger. And shall we call our new friend unskilled or a thorough master of his craft? Dietatus. Probably giggling. Certainly not unskilled, for his name, as indeed you imply, must surely express his nature. The Greek is Sophistes, which literally translates according to the online dictionary as master of one's craft, adept or expert. So he's basically saying, is the sophist a sophist? Hence the giggling. Stranger. Then he must be supposed to have some art. Dietatus. But what art? Stranger. By heaven, they are cousins. It never occurred to us. Who is cousins? The angler and the sophist. In what way are they related? They both appear to me to be hunters. How the sophist? Of the other we have spoken. Stranger. You remember our division of hunting into hunting after swimming animals and land animals? Yes. And you remember that we subdivided the swimming and left the land animals, saying that there were many kinds of them. Certainly. Thus far then the sophist and the angler, starting from the art of acquiring, take the same road. So it would appear. Their paths diverge when they reach the art of animal hunting, the one going to the seashore and to the rivers and to the lakes, and angling for the animals which are in them. Very true. While the other goes to land and water of another sort, rivers of wealth and broad meadowlands of generous youth, and he also is intending to take the animals which are in them. What do you mean? Of hunting on land, there are two principal divisions. What are they? One is the hunting of tame, and the other of wild animals. But are tame animals ever hunted? Yes, if you include man under tame animals. But if you like, you may say that there are no tame animals, or that if there are, man is not among them. Or you may say that man is a tame animal but is not hunted. You shall decide which of these alternatives you prefer. Theaetetus. I should say, stranger, that man is a tame animal, and I admit that he is hunted. Stranger. Then let us divide the hunting of the tame animals into two parts. How shall we make the division? Let us define piracy, man-stealing, tyranny, the whole military art by one name, as hunting with violence. Very good. And the art of the lawyer, of the popular orator, and the art of conversation may be called in one word, the art of persuasion. True. And of persuasion there may be said to be two kinds. What are they? One is private, and the other public. Yes, each of them forms a class. And of private hunting, one sort receives hire, and the other brings gifts. I do not understand you. You seem never to have observed the manner in which lovers hunt. To what do you refer? I mean that they lavish gifts on those whom they hunt, in addition to other inducements. Most true. Let us admit this, then, to be the amatory art, the art of love. Certainly. But that sort of hireling whose conversation is pleasing and who baits his hook only with pleasure and exacts nothing but his maintenance in return, we should all, if I am not mistaken, describe as possessing flattery or the art of making things pleasant. Pleasing people, the other translation said. Certainly. And that sort which professes to form acquaintances only for the sake of virtue, and demands a reward in the shape of money, may be fairly called by another name. To be sure. And what is the name, will you tell me? It is obviously enough, for I believe that we have discovered the Sophist, which is, as I conceive, the proper name for the class described. Then now, Theaetetus, this art may be traced as a branch of the appropriative, acquisitive family, which hunts animals, living, land, tame animals, which hunts man privately for hire, taking money in exchange, having the semblance of education, and this termed sophistry, and is a hunt after young men of wealth and rank. Such is the conclusion. Just so. Let us take another branch of this genealogy, for he is a professor of a great and many-sided art, And if we look back at what has preceded, we see that he presents another aspect besides that of which we are speaking. In what respect? There were two sorts of acquisitive art, the one concerned with hunting, the other with exchange. There were. And of the art of exchange there are two divisions, the one of giving and the other of selling. Let us assume that. Next, we will suppose the art of selling to be divided into two parts. How? There is one part which is distinguished as the sale of man's own production, another which is the exchange of the works of others. Certainly. And is not that part of exchange which takes place in the city, being about half of the whole, termed retailing? Yes. And that which exchanges the goods of one city for those of another by selling and buying is the exchange of the merchant. To be sure. Are you aware that this exchange of the merchant is of two kinds? It is partly concerned with food for the use of the body, and partly with the food of the soul, which is bartered and received received in exchange for money. Please do not batter the food of the soul. What do you mean? You want to know what is the meaning of food for the soul. The other kind you surely understand. Yes. Take music in general, and painting, and marionette playing, and many other things which are purchased in one city, and carried away and sold in another. Wares of the soul which are hawked about either for the sake of instruction or amusement. May not he who takes them about and sells them be quite as truly called a merchant as he who sells meat and drinks? To be sure he may. And would you not call by the same name him who buys up knowledge and goes about from city to city exchanging his wares for money? Certainly I would. Of this merchandise of the soul, may not one part be fairly termed the art of display? And there is another part which is certainly not less ridiculous, but being a trade in learning, must be called by some name germane to the matter. Certainly. The latter should have two names. One descriptive of the sale of the knowledge of virtue, and the other of the sale of other kinds of knowledge. Of course. The name of art seller, or expertise seller, the other translation says better, I think, corresponds well enough to the latter. So the one who sells other kinds of knowledge. But you must try and tell me the name of the other. He must be the sophist, whom we are seeking. No other name can possibly be right. No other. And so this trader in virtue again turns out to be our friend the sophist, whose art may now be traced from the art of acquisition through exchange, trade, merchandise, to a merchandise of the soul which is concerned with speech and the knowledge of virtue. Quite true. And there may be a third reappearance of him, for he may have settled down in a city, and may fabricate as well as buy these same wares, intending to live by selling them, and he would still be called a sophist. Certainly. Thus far, our scripture of the evening. Honestly, I got a bit too carried away with reading. I quite easily lose myself in things. But I did have the pre-made diagram. So I think I know why the reason for my confusion every time that I read the Sophist, and the Statesman plays by the same rules, I think, I'm not sure. Because he doesn't follow it step by step. And I am of a mind that really needs my structure. I need my step by step following of the pattern, because if the pattern change, it means I need to reorganize my entire mind in order to adapt. And I don't see it as clearly. So I made a pattern for myself. He skipped a few stages when he compared. So he does talk about, okay, as the angler, so the sophist is an expert, a craftsman, instead of a non-expert. But then he skips step 2 and 3, which is, and later he comes back to it and does include it then. An expert in things that you produce yourself or in things that you acquire. And then from acquiring, step 3, which he also basically skips, is exchange or taking, which he then kind of brings back in the second definition of the, so because he gives 2 different genealogies of the sophist here. And then he went, in the first one, he jumps immediately to the 4th step, which is combat or hunting. And he says he's a hunter. Then he skips the step, which I think is actually quite important, between living things and lifeless things. He jumps over that completely for the rest of, well, thus far. And he goes to step 6, which is land or water. And from there he diverges, of course. Not angling, not fishing, but hunting land animals. The tame and the wild, obviously he's talking about men and not women. Otherwise he would not have assumed that it's tame if he knew what was good for him. And he goes with tame. You can take them by force or by persuasion. He goes with persuasion. Private and public, he goes with private. Then love, gifts. Do not buy me gifts. That will not work on me. My love language is time spent, not gifts. I keep everything that I receive, but that's not my love language. A side note. The other private one is people-pleasing or flattery. And under this flattery or people-pleasing is where he places the sophist. And that is one of the big things that Plato and or Socrates have against the sophist. I think later on, because of course it's like, whoa, we already defined sophist and we're just in the beginning of the dialogue. I'm speaking very fast tonight, I'm sorry. But he will come back to it. And this people-pleasing part is the part of the sophists which they despise. And I prefer the other translation because making things pleasant is something that I myself also like to do, but I would not consider myself a people-pleaser. In fact, coming back to the Big 5 test, I can't even remember what it's called, but I score very low on that. So making pleasant, I think, is, in my mind, it has a positive connotation, while people-pleasing does not. So that's why I keep speaking of people-pleasing. Or flattery, indeed. And then he goes to the other genealogy. I'm sorry if you do not find this interesting, but I like to get things clear in my mind. And I need to have it on paper for me to get things clear in my mind. He skips the first step, which is he an expert or a non-expert, because it's in the name, so he probably assumes that's not important. Then he does, in fact, go back to this number 2 and 3, which he skipped earlier, and says, okay, we have making and acquiring. And under acquiring, we have exchange or taking. And taking, he just here equates with hunting, which is the next step actually originally. And then he goes with exchange. In what way is sophistry exchange? And then there's the giving or the selling. And he goes under selling further down, selling your own work. So he kind of jumps back to number 2, or the work of others. He goes with selling the work of others, which might be very interesting. I'm wondering if he wrote the philosopher, would the philosopher be selling his own work? It almost seems impossible, because a lover of wisdom does not make his own work or her own work, but seek after. So it might be a form of hunting, but they're not of men. And a form of selling or giving, probably here it might go to the giving part. But under giving, there should also be your own work or the work of others. So that's fun. That's a fun thing about having this little diagram. You could play with what would the philosopher have been. So the work of others, selling between cities or in the city, things for the body, things for the soul. There's nothing wrong with I would think there's nothing wrong with selling things for the soul. It's very valuable, very needed. Under things for the soul, display, art, music, those types of things, and knowledge. He distinguished between those. Under knowledge, virtue, and knowledge of other things. Then the Sophist sells the knowledge of virtue, at least so they claim. Thus far the Sophist. I don't know if we've already seen to what extent the Sophist is in the wrong according to Plato. Except for, as I said, in the people-pleasing part. And the selling part. Selling of virtue. Because I think we've mentioned it before that Socrates is doubtful whether you can in truth sell virtue to others. But we are only in the beginning of the dialogue in search of the Sophist. Why is it important that we see who the Sophist is? I did not think of it, I did not connect the two before I started speaking, but now in my mind the connection is starting to form between the post that Folly just shared on this April Fool's Day, on thinking yourself smart, and that's never a good idea. Now I lost my train of thought. Why should we be curious about who the Sophist is? Because the Sophist is one who thinks himself smart and better than others. And that's never a good stance to take in life, because it closes you to learning. Coming back to 12 rules. Always assume the person you are speaking to knows something that you don't, and that you can learn from them. And I imagine if you show up as someone who either hunts with knowledge or sells knowledge, you do not easily show up as someone who can learn. What do you think? I don't know. May the spirit of Sophia be with you.